I've met up with Greg here on the Black Veatch booth. Greg, for folks that aren't familiar with what you guys do, what does Black Veatch do?
So Black Veatch is a company that's been around for more than 100 years, primarily doing infrastructure projects for the utility industry. We also do water, oil and gas, telecom, battery or data centers now. So we help our clients solve solutions related to primarily infrastructure.
And you guys, you look at designing, building, whatever, entire power plants.
Yes.
So,
we'll go everything from services all the way through fully delivered projects on an engineer, procure, and construction basis across all those industries. I personally am in charge of the power part of that. So, and that's all forms of power, from conventional generation to the renewables market, distributed energy, which is a new market for us, and our transmission and distribution sector, which is all now interacting.
If you look worldwide and here in the US, wherever, the amount of change in the energy industry, the energy transition is kind of the big word, and especially in Europe. What kind of rapid, given your history with 100 years of building these things, what type of rapid changes are you seeing here with in terms of power generation?
So it's fascinating. The power industry in and of itself has been ongoing through a generational change every decade. You go back to the 70s and it was all about coal and nuclear. You couldn't build them fast enough. 80s, well, it turned out that coal wasn't as clean as it was, and so we put all this aftermarket equipment on it. None of it was ever designed to be there, so there's this major influx of trying to address the air pollution control created by these coal plants. Nuclear was still there. Gas was too expensive. Then roll around to the 2000s, okay? Nobody's building coal plants anymore. Nobody's building nuclear plants anymore, too expensive. But then with the advent of the 2000s, when we found low cost and get access to, really technology-driven access to this low-cost natural gas, all of a sudden, natural gas takes off. And now it is displacing all those other forms of generation purely on a cost basis. You can't dispatch, so coal's a base backbone of our electrical generation grid in the United States. It's a very reasonable resource overseas where natural gas isn't prevalent and is much more expensive. But here, it's natural gas, coal, nuclear, and now everybody's concerned about carbon. And that drives the renewables business. So that's wind, solar. Both of those are fluctuating, so you have to figure out how do you backstop that, right? And that drives batteries or other forms of energy storage, such as hydrogen and a bunch of other ways that folks are trying to solve that. I think the next wave, 2010 to 2020, you're going to see energy storage as being the way that renewables becomes the backbone of the power industry. But for now, you're going to need natural gas, and you're going to need some of the existing coal and nuclear units to remain online.
Now, you mentioned, and we were chatting earlier, in terms of the renewables.
Yes.
Now, given the scale of the projects that you guys typically get involved in, I'm assuming this isn't putting solar on a person's house. This is big solar farms, wind farms, offshore farms potentially, floating away, whatever, right?
So the answer to your question is yes and yes.
Okay.
So most of our, what I would call utility, what we term as utility grade solar, those are between 50 and 150, maybe 200 megawatt size.
Okay.
Big fields of solar panels. They have their own distribution issues. They have a substation associated with them. And then we have to take that to the grid. Some of them have even started to track the sun, right? So they move.
Cool. For the efficiencies.
Yeah, to get greater efficiencies. Really cool stuff. Some of the wind. In fact, we just back to the solar. We actually just bid a floating solar project in Taiwan.
Floating solar.
Imagine a big barge.
I've seen this pop up in many places around the world.
Fascinating stuff. It's great stuff. Then the wind is the same way, right? So wind is much more geographically located, right? Because it's got to be where you have a lot of land and it's got to be windy. And so that happens in the Southwest, even in the Midwest to a certain extent. So we're actively engaged in wind farms as well. Again, but they're intermittent. The wind doesn't blow they shut down, right? So then if there's a source demand relying on that source of electricity, and that demand goes away, then we're in trouble, right? So there's either backup storage, or you've got to be able to ramp up a gas or other unit.
Something needs to turn on.
Something needs to turn on to backstop it. But the other half of your question was, it's not really like on rooftops, but it is. So we are engaged with JP Morgan Chase, putting, believe it or not, rooftop solar panels across their fleet of branches. It's 1,500 branches. We're probably
virtual power plant kind of stuff.
So we take them off the grid. We go in, we figure out whether the roof can take it. So of the 1,500, we may do 1,000.
It depends on the
a lot of
structure,
dynamics. So
roof side, whatever.
But instead of having to be a year-long project, they're like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. You go in, you do the assessment, you lay out the panels, you send them to the field. They put them on in about a week, and then we start it up for them, and you could take the branch offline.
So last week I was at European Utility Week in Power Gen Europe.
Yeah.
Different dynamics and whatever. But one of the things that was coming through was, God, can we go faster? Are you seeing your clients, traditionally some of these projects could take a decade to think about and plan and design and look at and whatever. Now it's like, I need it yesterday.
Exactly.
So the pace of, doing what you do is just accelerating?
It actually is, especially in the renewables area. The large conventional generation projects in gas, they still take a long time, and there's permitting and all that, right? The solar projects, we bid probably 80, 90 solar projects last year of the 50 to 150 megawatt size. And we got our fair share. If we could take more work, we would be able to. There's enough business out there for a lot of companies to do very well. They're not as straightforward as you would think.
Devil's in the detail.
There's a lot to the detail. There's a lot to the underground, making sure that you can put these in where you think you can.
Yeah,
because, like you say, most of those sites are somewhat remote. So a lot of that goes on. But the speed with which companies are making the decision is, I want to be X% renewable, solar being the most quickly available one for them to be, has accelerated. I would say that, how you were as a kid when you came over that hill and just started down the hill. Well, we're halfway down the hill now. We've picked up speed.
Probably go a bit faster before we get to the flatten out.
But and I don't see that flattening out for another 5 or 6 years probably.
You mentioned energy storage.
Yes.
And obviously batteries, and I spend my time looking at technology stuff, so I think fascinating. All the stuff from chemicals and what kind of chemicals you put into the batteries, and flow batteries and mechanical, and there's people putting compressed air and yada yada. One of the big talking points in Europe right now is around hydrogen.
Yes.
And they're looking at how do we get energy storage for months for a region, a city. They're talking about salt caverns and whatever. Fascinating. Now, not ready for prime time, just in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be developed. You mentioned energy storage. What are you guys looking at?
So we're looking at kind of all things. We're not a battery manufacturer, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And so for us, the implementation of batteries as a storage medium is really fairly straightforward. We put them together, we get them delivered, we put all the infrastructure in, foundations, balance plank, kind of stuff. That's bread and butter. We do that all day. These are not particularly complicated in that regard. But the way the utilities are looking at them makes it very interesting, because they're saying to the EPC contractor, I want you to guarantee me megawatts for the next 10 years.
Okay.
Batteries degrade.
Yeah.
We have to predict how much they degrade over time and how quickly they need to be replaced. That all falls to us as an EPC contractor. So we've developed an analytical system called Asset 360 that allows us to monitor performance remotely, and thus and make predictive.
And especially for distributed energy resources,
right.
There's no control center sitting there.
Right, there's no control center, and they don't necessarily have an on-site maintenance.
No, there's nobody there at all.
So we've developed a business around monitoring, sending out and performing that maintenance for a third party. That, like a JP Morgan Chase or somebody like that, or a commercial industrial company, doesn't do that. That's not what they do. That's what you do. Yeah.
Last question. I came across your company last year, Distributech and PowerGen.
Yes.
you guys have your yearly strategic direction report.
Yes.
For a company with your profile, you kind of take a big picture view of what's going on in the energy world.
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Well, I guess so. The most important reason, the most relevant reason I think we do that is because our clients, whether they be utilities or even some of our core commercial industrial clients, because we touch a lot of different industries.
Yeah.
They look at us as a trusted partner. They often come to us and say, what do I
do next?
Next, yeah. What happens next? How do I, this is where I think I want to go. Do you know how to help me get there? And so we do that to help them figure out where to go, and then we help them find the solutions. Sometimes the solutions don't include anything that we do, but we still remain a trusted partner. The other big aspect of that is that we do that so that we're assured that we've structured our company and that I have our team focused on doing the things that are the right things for our company based on where the market's going, not only domestically but worldwide.
So it helps formulate your own strategic thinking, decision making, because like any company, you got investments to make, and where do we want to be?
Right, and how much do I want to put in this? How much money do I want to put in this bet, for example?
Hey, good stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.